Just another day that the Lord has kept me. Just another day that the Lord has kept me. He has kept me from all harm. He has kept me from a dangerous storm. Just another day that the Lord has kept me. Just another day that the Lord has kept me. Just another day that the Lord has kept me. He has kept me from all sin. He kept my mind stayed on him. So it's just another day that the Lord has kept me. Psalms 27. Because of time, I'll just read verses 4 and 5. But you ought to read chapter 27 in its entirety when you get a chance. Psalms 27, verses 4 and 5. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret place of his tabernacle he shall hide me. He shall set me high upon the rock. One thing that I have desired of the Lord, one thing that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord. Let me say that part again. That I might dwell in the house of the Lord. I don't want to be selfish, but I got to make my testimony today. Through all that has transpired over the last couple of weeks, and we find ourselves in a position that we have to make a decision. I won't tell you about my decision today. I'm going to church. Everything else, I'll deal with it when I have to deal with it. But my decision now is I'm going to church. Some will go to, and you know what's going on. Some will go to the grocery store. They'll go to the doctor. If the job will let them, you're going to work. And it's not an option. But when it comes down to church, now you want to tell us we got to have some common sense. We got to figure this. You know who God is, and He understands. And that's your reason that you've declared that I'm going to sit at home. And I'm going to even force my pastors and church auxiliary members to go online and come up with an app so I can sit down in front of the TV and watch church. But I've been born again. And I ain't off into watching church. My decision is I'm going to church. And I know enough Bible to know that I am the church. But I also know that God has blessed us to have a place that the church can congregate together and fellowship with one another. And I'm not telling anybody to come to church, and I'm not telling you to stay at home. You make your own choice. That's why I say I'm going to church. Doesn't take many for me. 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. God said He'll be in the midst. I'm going to church. And this scripture here, chapter 27 of Psalm, teaches us about a triumphant faith. David, I showed you to read about it. David had a triumphant faith because he had declared that the state or position he was in was a time of war and a time that he could very easily lose his life. Yes, sir. But he said, but there's one thing I desire that I'm going to seek after, that I might dwell in the temple with God, that I might abide with Him. And you know we're suffering the same thing now. You're in a life-threatening situation. You're in a situation where really your hands are tied. You don't have a choice of when it's going to come and when it's going to leave. If it's going to hit you or if it's going to hit your neighbor. But I'm going to church. I'm going to the place where refuge is. I'm going to the place where I can dwell in the shadow of the Almighty. I'm going to the place where I can get under the wings of my Father. I'm going to the place where He'll order my steps. I'm going to the place where I can dwell in the shadows and walk in the Almighty. Because there are some good reasons that right now we ought to go to church. If you look over into Proverbs chapter 18 around verse 10, he says His name is a strong tower, and the righteous run to it. And then you have the nerve to ask me, what am I going to do when Sunday comes? Well, I'm going to put on my track shoes because I'm running to the church house. Corona-19 and all that kind of stuff there, it has its place in society. It's going to do what it's going to do. But I tell you one thing, I'm still dwelling in the house of the Lord. Yes, because the house of the Lord is a place of refuge, a place of protection. And what I like about dwelling with God, He is our refuge. And being our refuge does not mean that we're not going to get caught up with something. It just means that we will be dwelling with Him while we have what we have. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather dwell with a God that has healing in His hand when I'm sick. I'd rather dwell and be in the refuge of a God who's able to comfort me when everybody else is going crazy. In the church house, that I might dwell in a place of refuge. Job 5:21 says, you will be hidden from the scourge of the tongue when you dwell with the Almighty. And it says, and not be afraid when violence comes. When you're out in the world and going through what you're going through, it generally brings about fear. And the reason it brings about fear is because you skipped over that word dwell. And you're not understanding that dwell means to live in, to walk in, to be in. I'm dwell. And well, let me turn it around for you. What happens when the Spirit dwells in you? Decisions are made for you that will bring you to a place of peace, a place of satisfaction, even though it does not remove you from the location. And he says again in Job 5:21, you will be hidden from the scourge of the tongue. Can't nobody tear you down when you dwell in the temple, when you abide under the wings of the Almighty, and you walk in the shadow of our God. And it says, and be not afraid when violence comes. Well, if that's not good enough for you, let me give you another reason that you ought to inquire this one thing of the Lord. 1 Samuel 22 and verse 23 says, stay with me and do not be afraid. For he who seeks my life seeks your life too. But for you are safe when you're with me. And they have the nerves, Reverend Roden, to ask me, why am I going to church? Well, I'm going to church because the God you talk about is the same God that talks to me. And if he lets me know that you're after him, I already know that you're after me. But he is the Almighty. And he says, do not fear. And I find comfort when the Almighty says, do not fear. Simply because he's Almighty. Not by your power and not by my power or by my might, but by the power and the might of God will I walk in comfort. And I just like what God does for all of his children. He has us in the land of the dying, but we're walking in the world of living. God said that he came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And if the Almighty gives me life, why am I walking around worrying about death? Why am I worried about sickness? Why am I worried about fear? Because I'm dwelling in the power and the love of the Almighty. Reverend Roden, you know what's going on with us today. We don't want to tell it, but we're scared of this coronavirus. And let's look at what it's done to us. It done caused you to walk away from the very one that says, come to me. You walking away from the very one who said, I'll take care of you. You walking from the very one who says, I've overcome the world. I'm the one who set the stars in the sky. I'm the one who scooped down in dust and made a man that you running from. I'm the one who is the creator. And you walking away from me because of something that somebody else has messed up and put in your life. But I'm going to church. If I don't go anywhere else. And another reason that I'm going to church is because I got to take some home with me. And you can't get no church sitting around doing nothing and scared of what people are saying and what's going on in your life. And it ain't just about this coronavirus. It's about all these other viruses going on too. Reverend Roden, some folks are staying at home because of the corona-19. And I understand because when I was younger, I stayed at home because of some coronas too. A case of coronas kept me home a couple of times. You know, there's some other viruses out there too. So the Budweiser virus got me a couple of times, and then there was this evil one called Hennessy. It kept me, and it didn't take 19 or a case or 12. It just took a little old fifth of a Hennessy virus, and it kept me at the house a couple of times. So let me bag up and say that to somebody that stayed at home today. and got your phone sitting up in front of you and listening to the preacher. It ain't no Corona-19. I know what virus you suffering from. You don't want to come and worship God. And don't you know that God's not going to make you come worship him? And he'll have you walking in ignorance. And now you've gotten caught up in fear and don't know what to do and which way to go. But I want to invite you to the church house. And you can go to just about any one of them now because the pews is empty. Because everybody else is just as scared as you are. But can I tell you something truthful from my heart? I'd rather come into this place while I'm still alive so that people will know what to say about me when I'm gone. You ought to come to church at least long enough that when it's time for your funeral to take place, the preacher ought to at least know your name, and the choir ought to know one of your favorite songs. The preacher shouldn't have to bury you and can't even call your name because he doesn't know anything about you. But in order for things like that to get in order, you've got to dwell in the house. And you need to you ought to have a desire to come to this place. Yes, sir. But I don't come here just because it's safekeeping. I come to this place because this is the place I know I can have sweet fellowship. Thank you, Lord. Praise God. And today I saw you bumping hands and standing back 6 feet from one another, but that don't make any difference to me. I know you still love me. And I know if you wasn't scared, you'll hug me like you normally hug me. But that's okay. You mark my words. You watch when this coronavirus pass on, it's going to be something else. And then you'll be back to hugging me after a while. See, it used to be age. Y'all don't remember all that. You won't touch nobody then. But as soon as it died down, y'all went to hugging one another again. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. After letting things like this keep you from being around and hugging and showing those that you love them and care for them because you're scared of a little something that's going on. But again, Reverend Rodney, it ain't just Corona-19 or the coronavirus or whatever you want to call it. Some people can't hug you because they got a little envy in their heart. You know that's a virus too, don't you? Some of them, they looking upside of your head and hoping you don't say nothing to them because they're too proud to look at you and let you know that they don't want to shake your hand. But the Bible tells us if you want some friends, you ought to show yourself to be friendly. And you ought to at least start in the house of worship because can I tell you something? For God so loved the world, he didn't just shake your hand, he died for you. And if he died for you while you was yet his enemy, you ought to at least be able to hug your neighbor. I ain't one of them preachers to tell you hug them and rock them and shake them, but you ought to at least talk to them every once in a while. Don't do it now. Let me finish preaching because y'all going to break my concentration. But you ought to learn how when you get to the house of God, you ought to know that he's able. He's able to keep the fellowship. And that's why he brings you to the place of worship. He brings us all to commune and fellowship with one another. Don't you know sometimes I grow from your testimony? Sometimes you grow from my preaching. Sometimes my spirits are lifted because of the songs that the choir sings. My head is lifted up when I see that he has done for others what he has also promised that he'll do for me. I feel good when I come to the house of worship. This is the place where everybody can be under one spirit and be controlled by the Spirit of God. And don't you know when the Spirit of God controls you, then you'll dwell in unity and in love. And maybe you hadn't been where I've been, but all last week I've been in a land of hatred. I've been in a land of discord. I've been in a land where the tongue was talking against me and not talking on my behalf. And I was glad when I got a chance to get to the house of the Lord. Because in this place you've been praying for me. You've been singing with me. You've been worshiping the same God that I worship. I can't worry about what's going on in the world today. I look forward to getting back to the house of worship. Yes, sir. One of the preachers told me the other day that on Tuesdays when we have our noonday service, he says that, Pastor, you'll preach to the small number just like it's a house full. I'm saying it's not because of who's sitting in the pew. It's because of the one who's dwelling in my heart. One man needs God just as much as a multitude. I don't care who's sitting out in the pews and how many is sitting out in the pews. If he let me open my mouth, it's going to spark something down in my heart. And I'm going to holler and I'm going to shout. And I'm not trying to entertain you, but I'm trying to help you. One thing that I seek after, that I might dwell in the house of God, because that's what my triumphant faith taught me. My triumphant faith taught me that don't look at what's bad, but just concentrate on what's good. He did tell us to keep your mind stayed on him. He taught us to think on the good things of life. Think on whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is right, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is kind. And I don't know no other place to find it but the house of worship. Because love comes from the house, the owner of the house. Kindness comes from his hands, and it stems from his heart. Love and joy and peace is the dwelling place of our God. And he gives it to us, and he allows us to use it for our own good. I don't know about you, but I'm going to church. And I'm going to church because it rubs off on me. I don't just talk like this on a Sunday. Catch me on Monday, and I still tell you, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whomsoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. If you want to know where I learned this in the church house. He told Peter, upon this rock I build it. I build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I'm going to the dwelling place of the Most High God, because God sets you up on a hill, around about that all men can see. That's why he built his church on a rock. He put us up high so everybody can look up to the hill, from whence cometh our help. All of our help comes from the Lord. Amen. Amen. But reason again in Samuel 22 and 23. Just stay with me and don't be afraid. That's why I'm walking up here in boldness now. And I told you the house is a place of refuge. But can I also tell you it's a place of preservation? You can get preserved in the church house. Y'all don't believe me. I got my own testimony today. Y'all see this real nice suit I got on now? Y'all see this nice tie I got on? This tie and this suit I have on now, I bought it 27 years ago. And I wore it just for this sermon. I'm telling you the truth. I buried my best friend in this suit. And then I turned around 11 months later and married my wife in this suit. Same tie. And I'm telling you that God will preserve it. Now you can quit looking at the suit and quit looking at the tie. Because that ain't what I'm talking about. I ain't talking about keeping no clothes and keeping no tie. I'm talking about me. Take a look at me. He done kept me. And I can still wear what I wore 27 years ago. And my mind is just as sharp as this suit. I'm thinking, and I'm clothed in my right mind. 27 years later, I'm better now than I was when I first put the suit on. That's because in the house of worship, God will preserve you. He'll keep you in perfect peace. He'll keep your mind, and he'll guard your heart. That's why I'm going to church, because God will take care of all of his children. And another reason I wanted to tell you how old this suit was, because there's some naysayers at home looking at us right now. And I want you to know that I ain't have to come to church and beg the church to make me look sharp. I was sharp 27 years ago. God blessed me 27 years ago. And God ain't worried about no suit and no tie, and I ain't either. Because if the truth be told, I was scared it was so old it was going to fall off of me. But God has already blessed us, and he's preserved us. He's kept us. We are royal to him. We are his children. And he has kept us just as healthy. And can I tell you something else? I can't tell you that if you come to church, you're not going to get sick. I can't tell you that your sickness may not be, your sickness may be unto death. I can't tell you that if you get here, he's going to take that sickness away from you. But what I can tell you is that if you get to the house, whatever the decision that God has for you, it's going to be all right. That's what happens when you dwell in the house of God. Because when you sat with him and talked with him, he may tell you and show you some things that you don't agree with. But if you stay with him long enough, you'll understand. Nobody wants to die, but everybody wants to go to heaven. But don't you know that it is when he speaks to you and says, come here, my child, that's when you have perfect peace with him. Because he's not telling you that I'm going to take your life and you'll never see me again. He's saying, I'm going to take you out of here to where you can really see who I am. And I don't know about you, but when he calls my name, there'll be a smile on my face and tears of joy flowing everlasting. Because I get a chance to be with the one who has never left me nor forsaken. See, I really feel kind of uncomfortable now ushering up praises. I think I feel a little better when I'm with him to praise him. When I see him face to face. Oh, I'll be so glad when I'll see him for who he truly is. That's when I'll be able to really bless his name. And then I won't have to worry about getting tired over there. Because over there, you won't get tired, won't be no sleep, there won't be no sickness. Every day will be a day worthy of worshiping him and praising him. I keep telling you, ain't no night because there's no darkness in him.
Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Yes, sir. Thank you, Father God. Thank you. Hallelujah.
David tells us about this triumphant faith. David was showing us this faith because he was in a time of war. And this is one of the greatest examples that we could ever find in the history of the Psalms that will be relevant to what we are facing in life today. He's facing war. He's facing death. He's facing an enemy much larger than he is. He's facing the possibility of defeat. Because sometimes you go to war. You do know that David went to war and he didn't win them all. So David did not know whether he was going to defeat his enemy or his enemy was going to capture him. Neither do you. You don't know when you're going to go and how you're going to go. You don't know if it be from natural causes or world disaster. You don't know whether it be old age or young foolishness. But one thing I know for sure, that my faith teaches me, whatsoever the Lord desires, then I'll be satisfied. Whichever way he chooses to bless me, I'll be satisfied. If he blesses me to stay here a little while longer, that's all right. Because that means I get a chance to tell the story just a little while longer. Because for God I live, and for God I'm willing to die. I'm glad that he leaves me, if he'll leave me here, because I'll be able to testify. As long as I live, I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor a seed begging bread. If he leaves me here, I'll be able to say, I once was young, and now I'm old. And I won't have to worry and walk on the testimony of the older saints. I'll be able to give my own testimony. One day, Reverend Roden, I might have to roll in here instead of walk in here. But I'll still be able to say, God is good. And he is one that has never changed. Because I know that he'll roll with you just as well as he'll walk with you. I just thank God that there is all victory in him. That's what my faith teaches me. My faith and my hope is built on nothing less but Jesus' blood and his righteousness. And whenever we have to go out in this world in battle, you ought to have victory in him. And if you want to be a good fighter, you ought to get in the dwelling place and seek after the counsel of God. Because if he tells you to fight, he'll also show you how to fight. And you can learn it when you dwell with him. If you live with him, that means that you're a soldier with him. And aren't you glad that you're a soldier in the army of the Lord? That's what David said. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. If the enemy captures me, he can't hold me. Look at Paul. Paul preached a jailhouse religion. They got him locked up and laid down next to the guards. They got guards on the door, and still he's got parchment and sending his word out to the other folks. And whenever the Lord stepped in, can I show you what he did for Paul? Y'all got a little time, don't you? He took Paul while he was in captive, and he was laid down with the guards and guards on the door. He rocked the door, and then the doors opened, and then they walked out, and those who are supposed to be holding him is still fast asleep. Can I tell you that that's what kind of God we serve? When the devil thinks he's got us, I'm running around here shouting and hollering and having a good time and still walking in the presence of God, and the enemy is sleeping on me, baby.
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy.
You done put every chain, every shackle. You done held me back every chance you've got. You done put people to watch after me, control and keep him down. But yet still, I'm still waking up with joy. I'm still walking around free. Because he who the Son sets free is free indeed. You done told me I never amount to anything, but God has blessed me with everything. You done told me you're not smart enough to make it, but I'm going to tell you something. My God is all wisdom. And whatever it is that I cannot achieve on my own, he'll give it to me if I just ask for it. And see, that's what confounds the minds of the wicked. They just can't understand how I can be a man of sin and a sinless God can still bless me. You know, it just don't make no sense, Reverend Rose. It don't make no sense that God keep on giving stuff to us and doing things for us. And we keep saying stuff against him and doing things against him, but yet and still, he keeps waking you up in the morning. He keeps blessing you, and he keeps telling you that he loves you. He keeps telling you, I've given you another voice, so just repent today, and I'll cast it into the sea of forgetfulness. They just can't understand how you used to cuss them out, but now cussing ain't in your vocabulary anymore, because God has stepped in and said, you ain't got to talk like that. If you want the enemy to let you alone, all you have to do is bridle your tongue. I know some of you just take the bridle off every once in a while, but it's not that you don't have the bridle in front of you, but God is still saying, just repent. Just let me know that you still understand that what I call wrong, you call wrong. And what I hate, you hate. I know that it'll get you from time to time, but don't worry about it getting you, because if it gets you, I'm sure to come and get you.
Yeah. Amen. I got you. Got you, pal.
David, with this triumphant faith, shown us don't worry about anything. And also, when you dwell with him, when you seek after him, then you will behold his beauty. I've already preached about it, so I can't go over it again. He's saying, but you will behold, that he might behold his beauty. What's beautiful to you about God? I'm waiting on y'all. This question and answer period. What's beautiful to you about God? David said, I want to behold his beauty. I want to look at his beauty. But a generic term is I want to behold it too. In other words, I want to hold some of it. When I behold the beauty of God, the beauty of God is what God does in the midst of a tragic situation. He shows his omnipresence. He shows his unfailing love. He shows his strength and his stronghold. In other words, it's like I heard a person say about a true artist. A true artist will take nothing and create something. He'll take a lump of clay and molded and sculpted and make some of the most beautiful things that we could ever imagine, because he saw it in his mind while you saw it in his hand. Don't you know that's what God, I got to close there. I got to get out of here. Don't you know that that's what God did for us? He took us as a hunk of dirt and scooped down, and he molded it with his hand. And because he's the great artist, he took that dirt and he put some eyes on it. He put some ears on it. Now this lump of dirt can see and can hear. And then he put a mouth on it so you can talk. But before he let you talk, he had to put something else in you, because that is not a masterpiece yet. But then that's what a good artist will do for you. And a good artist, he breathes on his work. And that's why they say a good artist, a good sculptor, what he makes is from his heart and not just from his head. And I believe that that's what God did for us. That's why we're more than dogs and fishes and birds and things of the air and beasts out in the field. That's why we're a little better, because there's some love been put into us. It took some time to mold us and make us. He just spoke animals into existence, but he held us and molded us and made us what he wanted us to be. But can I tell you what else he did before he finished us? He did something else for us. Instead of just breathing on us, he also said that there's something that I got to cover you with. I'm at Calvary now. Y'all done missed everything. Yeah. He went up on Calvary. And up on Calvary, he says that I love you enough that I'm going to give you something else that will preserve you and keep you, that you might dwell with me. He died for you. And when he died, he shed his blood for you, and he paid it all on a hill called Calvary. And now I can dwell in his temple. Now I can dwell with him. Now I can have what he has for me.
Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm going to church. I want to see you Sunday after Sunday, but I want to hear about it Monday after Monday. This is the place where testimonies are built. This is the place where you share what God has done for you. This is the place that you come to when everything else is holding you down. And again, you can watch it on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere if you want to. But I have something I got to say. And I know some preachers and pastors are going to disagree with it, because they say everybody's situation is different. If you can sit and listen on social media and still be sitting after the word has been preached and have no desire to come and fellowship amongst the brethren, you may have listened to the wrong message. You may have been indwelt with the wrong spirit, because there ain't no way I can sit and listen at God and how good he is and let him tell me that he wants me to fellowship with the assembly of others. And then I sit there like a bump on a log. And I can't move, and I got just enough right here in my recliner. No, if God steps into your life, and if you look at what he has done for you the way I've looked at what he done for me, I'll tear that recliner up, and I'll burn the wheels off of that car trying to get to the place that I can tell somebody what God has done for me. And even if you sitting there and you know God will do it for you, and he's just saying, come lay your burdens at the altar. Come to me now and lay your burdens at the altar, and come fellowship with the assembly of others. Come sing unto the Lord a new song. Come bless his holy and divine name. Come to this place where the wicked shall cease from troubling, and the weary shall be at rest. I know that's up in heaven that y'all think, but can I tell you something? You got to get trouble off of you right now, too. The wicked will let you alone if you come to the house of worship. Because can I tell you, you know what y'all been saying, God bind up the devil. But if you ever want to put some brakes on him, you need to come to get his word. Because the Bible tells me that when you call on the name of Jesus, demons will tremble and the devil has to flee. You need to come in here where we're talking about the word, so that you can be a witness at what God can do through his word and what he will do for you. God bless you.